Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take the source material you shared and really pull out the essential nuggets of knowledge you need to be seriously well-informed.
Exactly.
Today, we're diving into strategy, but we're skipping the glamorous whiteboard sessions and heading straight to, well, the brutal reality of execution.
It's where the rubber meets the road, for sure. And the sources, they're pretty unforgiving about the data on this.
I saw that. We're talking about a critical and honestly a pretty painful statistic.
Yeah, that less than 10% of strategies that are formulated are actually implemented successfully.
Hey, hold on. So 9 out of 10 brilliant plans, they just die on the vine.
Pretty much.
That's brutal. That means the greatest, most enlightened strategic vision in the world is, functionally worthless if the implementation is poor.
It is. Execution really is the toughest phase of strategy management.
So, okay. Our deep dive today is all about how organizations can beat that 90% failure rate by, it seems, fundamentally changing the battlefield.
That's the core of it. We are exploring the shift from what the sources call red oceans, where rivals are just fighting fiercely over a shrinking market share, to blue oceans.
Where you create new, uncontested growth space.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission for you, the listener, is to understand the core philosophy behind these market-creating strategies and, how to actually make them actionable.
And we're going to frame all of this using a really dramatic case study.
Nintendo
And their necessary strategic shift during the video game console wars. We'll look at the practical, systematic tool that makes this blue ocean strategy executable. The Eliminate, Reduce, Race, Create matrix.
The ERRC grid.
That's the one. It's the bridge from a brilliant idea to, well, a successful delivery.
So let's start with the implementation challenge itself.
Yeah.
When a new strategy rolls out, it means massive change. But what makes that internal transition so often just collapse?
I think the biggest challenge is the handoff. You have the strategists, right? They formulate the grand plan. But the implementation, the actual doing that, shifts to division or functional managers, people on the ground.
And that separation creates huge friction.
It's a massive source of friction.
Right.
If the implementers don't feel that sense of ownership, they often just don't deliver.
That handoff really does sound like a perfect opportunity for failure. So what are the common internal hurdles that sabotage even, a really well-designed plan?
The roadblocks are, they're incredibly predictable. And the organizations that succeed are the ones that manage them up front.
Okay.
So we consistently see things like the plan requiring more time or resources than was budgeted.
Always.
Or unanticipated problems constantly cropping up because of poor communication. Or activities being ineffectively coordinated across siloed departments.
And I can only imagine a sudden crisis,
Right.
a lawsuit, a supply chain issue. It just distracts everyone from the long-term vision.
Exactly. And beyond those external fires, you find this core internal decay. Employees lacking the necessary capabilities or the training for the new direction.
Weak leadership.
Weak leadership failing to cascade the vision clearly, or just relying on outdated information systems that can't even track the strategic progress.
So if the challenge is coordination and fighting all this internal friction, how do successful organizations actually enforce execution? The sources really emphasize alignment.
They do, and it sounds like building internal discipline, because it is. Successful execution requires rigorous alignment in 3 key areas. It's about locking the organization onto the target.
Okay, so it's the first one.
First is aligning initiatives. You just cannot launch a forward-looking strategy while you're still pouring resources into old legacy activity.
You need a quantitative way to kill old projects, right? Otherwise, they just linger forever.
Precisely. And tools like the Kaplan and Norton scorecard model, they help enforce this. They measure initiatives not just on return, but on their strategic value, their resource demands, their inherent risks.
So it gives managers a shared language for saying no?
A shared data-driven language for saying no to non-strategic work. And second,
the money.
The money. Aligning budgets is absolutely crucial. You have to protect your strategic initiatives from being cannibalized by short-term operational demands. Right. So Norton and Kaplan, they advocate for setting aside specific funding, often called stratex, that's protected from being reallocated to, general operational expenses, OPEX.
So it's like a protected trust fund for the strategy.
Kind of, yeah. And it's reviewed just as rigorously as large capital expenditures, CapEx. This ensures the strategy doesn't run out of fuel halfway through the race.
Okay, budget protection is essential. What's the third alignment point?
Structure must follow strategy. It's a classic saying for a reason.
Because if you try to force a new strategy into an old structure,
You create an instant internal deadlock. The structure has to be fluid enough to allow the strategy to cascade across functions and down the hierarchy without being blocked by old divisional boundaries.
okay, that covers the internal mechanics. So once the internal machine is aligned, what kind of battlefield are we sending it into? This brings us to that famous red ocean versus blue ocean metaphor. Why is traditional competition, the red ocean, such a bloody battlefield?
Because red oceans are defined by head-to-head competition within existing industry boundaries. Everyone is fighting for the same customer.
Which leads to a zero-sum game.
Exactly, a zero-sum outcome. They're exploiting existing demand, and the only way to really win is to make that painful value-cost trade-off.
Meaning you either compete on premium value at a high cost or you compete on low cost with low value. You can't have both.
Not in a red ocean, you can't. That's why these pools become these bloody red oceans of rivals fighting over a shrinking profit pool.
Grim.
Yeah. Now, compare that to a blue ocean strategy. BOS doesn't try to win the existing game. It changes the game entirely.
It creates uncontested market space.
Right, making the competition irrelevant. And, crucially, it creates and captures totally new demand.
And this is all powered by something called value innovation, which, I have to say, sounds like the holy grail of strategy.
It sort of is. Value innovation is the cornerstone of blue ocean strategy. It's defined as the simultaneous pursuit of differentiation and low cost.
So it breaks that painful value-cost trade-off.
It shatters it, creating a powerful leap in value for both the company and for you, the buyer.
But how do you actually pull that off? Differentiation and low cost at the same time. It sounds less like strategy and more like magic.
It's structured creativity. It requires aligning the entire operating system, utility, price, and cost.
Yeah.
You get cost savings by eliminating and reducing factors the industry currently competes on.
Okay, so you cut costs by subtraction.
Exactly. And that lowers your operating expenses. Simultaneously, you lift buyer value by raising and creating new elements that the industry has never offered before.
It's subtraction in one area to allow for radical addition in another.
You got it.
This brings us perfectly to Nintendo. Before their big shift, they were absolutely trapped in the red ocean of the console wars. I mean, describe that brutal history.
Oh, their history was defined by escalating conflict. It started with the rivalry against Sega.
Right, Genesis does what Nintendo didn't.
Exactly, that famous, aggressive slogan. But the real drama was the arrival of the next generation of competitors.
And that rivalry was born out of a colossal, self-inflicted wound for Nintendo.
A tragedy of corporate arrogance, really. The PlayStation brand was born after Nintendo infamously betrayed a partnership with Sony to develop a CD-ROM add-on for the SNES.
Oh, I remember this. Sony just took the tech and ran with it.
They took the technology, continued the project independently, and entered the market as a massive rival. And then, soon after, the battlefield got even tougher when Microsoft entered with the Xbox.
So Nintendo was suddenly caught in this graphics arms race they couldn't possibly win. I mean, we've seen Microsoft support its Xbox division with acquisitions like Bethesda for $75 billion.
That financial muscle was the game changer. The former Nintendo president, Satoru Iwata, he realized that direct competition just made no sense.
They couldn't compete on specs.
No, Nintendo simply lacked the multinational corporate backing to compete on the same technical terms. Competing on specs would have bankrupted them, especially given their declining console sales leading up to the Wii era.
And they weren't just fighting rival consoles, were they? They were fighting for people's free time.
Every second of it. The volatility was massive. They were competing against electronic substitutes, mobile games, websites, but also non-electronic ones like reading a book or going to the movies.
So they had to find a new audience.
They had to find a way to capture a segment of the audience that the others weren't even targeting.
Right.
The Wii was their successful Blue Ocean launch.
But we should note, it isn't a silver bullet. The Wii U was a commercial failure.
A huge failure. Though it did serve as a crucial prototype for the later wildly successful Switch, it's not always a linear path.
So how did they execute this pivot? How did they use that 4 actions framework? Eliminate, reduce, raise, and create on to systematically achieve value innovation.
Well, the ERRC grid, it forces you to challenge every sacred cow in the industry. Let's start with eliminate, which is removing anything the industry spent money on that wasn't generating real buyer value.
What sacred cow did Nintendo slaughter?
The hugely expensive in-person conferences, particularly the Electronic Entertainment Expo E3.
Right, those have become these massive high-production spectacles.
Costing millions. Nintendo eliminated that cost and distraction by shifting almost entirely to Nintendo Direct, which is a mostly pre-recorded digital event format.
That gave them total control over the script, the pacing,
Yeah.
and it let them manage anticipation beautifully without all that overhead.
And it was so clearly successful that rivals like PlayStation and Xbox, they later imitated the exact same model.
Okay, so that's eliminate. What about reduce?
Reduce is dialing back resource requirements, and this is where they chose to walk away from the graphics race.
The teraflops arms race.
Yes, they dramatically reduced the graphics power of the gaming console, abandoning it entirely. They didn't need the most powerful chip. They needed the most intuitive, cost-effective experience, and that drastically lowered their manufacturing costs.
And it affected game development too, right?
Hugely. They also reduced the budgets and deadlines in video game development. By prioritizing creative, nostalgic gameplay over hyper-realism, development times became more flexible, they lowered the financial threshold to break even, and they ensured their exclusive game models could perpetually sell.
That is a masterstroke. Turning an industry weaknessless graphical power into a competitive strength by lowering costs and increasing creative flexibility. Okay, so now the value-adding side. Yeah, raise increase.
Right, so Nintendo focused on building value for users far beyond the console itself through brand extension. They raised the profile of their intellectual property, their characters, and extended it into massive commercial value outside of just gaming.
Give us some examples of that.
Well, look at the sheer scale of it. The cinematic release of Super Mario Bros., the movie, the incredibly popular Amiibo collectible figures,
The theme parks.
the global themed amusement parks at Universal Studios, the creation of the Nintendo Museum. It all creates this virtuous commercial cycle where every time you interact with the brand, you reinforce its value.
It builds an entire entertainment ecosystem that's self-reinforcing. Okay, finally, create. Generating innovative ways for excellence that the industry had never offered.
And this is where they capitalized on their deep history. They created the nostalgic feeling as a core competitive advantage.
And this isn't just a vague feeling, is it?
No, it's a very specific emotional connection built on 4 characteristics. Endearing games, active reminiscence of the past, like opening the console on Christmas morning,
Sure.
reviving emotions through intergenerational gameplay, and sharing those stories through social networks like Miiverse.
That moves them past just selling hardware and software. They're maintaining a sustained emotional relationship with the customer.
Which acts like a protective force field around their brand. It makes their customer base loyal advocates, not just followers.
So this all brings us back to execution. A blue ocean idea is only viable if it successfully navigates what the sources call the strategic sequence.
The checkmate move, yeah. You have to answer 4 questions in sequence to minimize your risk.
What's the first one?
First, buyer utility. Does the offering unlock exceptional utility? Is there a truly compelling reason for the mass market to buy it?
And second?
Price. Is it priced to attract that mass of target buyers? Does it give them a compelling ability to pay?
So steps 1 and 2, nail the revenue side and ensure you have that powerful leap in net buyer value.
Exactly. The third step is cost. Can the product be produced at the target cost and still earn a healthy profit margin?
So you never let costs dictate the price.
Never. The value dictates the price, and the profit margin dictates the target cost. And finally, adoption. Have you addressed the inevitable organizational hurdles, cognitive, resource, political upfront to ensure this can actually happen?
Because if you haven't, the plan, no matter how brilliant, will just fail in implementation.
It will.
This review, it really highlights the critical lesson that Blue Ocean strategy relies entirely on organization-wide engagement. The whole organization has to live and breathe it for execution to succeed.
In conclusion, yeah, success requires more than just being unique. It depends largely on how strategies are executed and followed through. Strategy is both proactive in seeking that blue ocean and reactive in dealing with the internal realities of implementation.
And Nintendo minimized their risk.
They did by prioritizing creative, intuitive gameplay over hyperrealism, and they managed to create these timeless video games that transcend generations.
But the red ocean waits for no one. The sources remind us that the Nintendo Switch is now in the final stretch of its commercial life cycle.
Its successor, the Nintendo Switch 2, has been officially announced.
Right, confirming continuity and backward compatibility. But the Blue Ocean success of 2017 is already growing stale.
Strategic renewal is always, always necessary.
So, we leave you with this final provocative thought. Given that even a blue ocean success eventually becomes contested or ages out, which of the four ERRC actions eliminate, reduce, raise, or create do you think will be the most critical for the Switch 2 to succeed in this perpetually dynamic entertainment market?
Well, they need to eliminate a costly feature, reduce the price point dramatically.
Will raise the level of connectivity, create an entirely new control method, something for you to mull over until our next deep dive.